Hi everyone. So this is going to be a fairly critical take on the idea of a future city, specifically smart city. And the basis of the criticism, or critique rather, is that I think future city, very much like the future home, looks rather similar to the way it always did. And I think I probably have an issue with that. Part of the issue, I think, is because the future city is the product primarily of a technological imaginary, and increasingly that technological imaginary is allied to a sort of corporate, computational, neoliberal way of thinking. So this future city has a tendency to be quite abstract, predictable maybe, certainly generic, and very singular. We tend to talk about the future city. And we can approach it, sort of challenge it, with reference to the more messy, singular, specific, stubbornly embodied reality. I always look at these pictures and think, where are the people? And we can compare it to the realities, the more messy realities of city life as we know it. And that's fine to an extent. But the problem is, for me, that opposition of an ideal city and a real one is a little bit limited, okay? It sort of works to an extent. It doesn't tell us, for example, about the extent to which corporatism and computationalism already pervade domestic life and urban life. So having said that I think oppositional thinking is limited, I'm going to offer a series of oppositions: future, past, smart, dumb, transparent, opaque, sterile, sexist. And the point will be to signal a way of moving beyond them. So the goal for me isn't just to expose a set of false claims associated with the future city, specifically things like smart. It's not actually even to go back, as if we could, from corporatism to a sort of pristine sense of community. I don't think it's necessarily even straightforward to try and humanize technology, however much we might share the goals of citizen engagement and collective action and self-determination, et cetera, et cetera. The thing is that the corporations that envision our smart futures, and to a certain extent engineer them, use human logics, if you like, to justify. They use our interests to justify their own, right? So if we've got human logics used to justify corporate machine logics, order, efficiency, predictability, measurability, what we cannot really do is base a critique on the opposition of human versus machine. What we can do is see those things as being related but antagonistic. We can look at them in tension, and this tension would give us potentially some space, some time to work towards more provisional, hybrid citizens and more provisional hybrid values. All right, so the talk will in a sense mime or plunge the future city idea for a kind of emergent citizen, an urbane political subject, urbane in the sense of being worldly, not necessarily polite. And this subject is neither in the future or in the past, but kind of contingently present in, I think, an increasingly wide variety of interventions that are made through art, through design, and even through philosophy, for example. So one of the people that's written about the smart city is Adam Greenfield, and his case against it is basically that we've, again, seen it before. We've actually lived it, we've suffered it, we've criticized it in the forms of the somewhat rigid administrative functional architecture and urban planning of the modernist period. So I accept that to an extent. And within this modernist period, there's a particular moment for me that really stands out as being applicable to what I think of as current forms of futurism. And that moment is the post-war re-domestication of women and re-traditionalization of gender roles. And we have learned already, from Betty Friedan, for example, that process of re-domestication, that process of the re-traditionalization of gender, coincides with, reacts to, a massive opening up of possibilities for women in employment and in education. So what I'm saying is we can make a very direct comparison this is Monsanto's future home of the 1950s. It was a very popular Disneyland attraction for at least 10 years. We can compare this very directly with, if you like, more recent offerings on the future home from Microsoft et al. And I think they look remarkably similar. And of course, we can find out more about them through promotional videos on YouTube, and I'll come back to that in a second. The key point of comparison for me is a regulatory figure, and that's the happy housewife turned working mother. And what I can't quite believe is that even after all this time, she's back in the kitchen. So the very first promotional video from Microsoft's future home put Janet in the smart home. Which room did they put her in? Yep. She found herself blessed with a talking, speech-enabled kitchen worktop that said to her, because she walks in, it can talk, says, "Hey, Janet," says, "do you want some help with your baking?" She says yes. I'm sorry for the blurriness. She puts her bag of flour on a hotspot on the worktop. Up pops a recipe for focaccia bread. It transpires that the protagonists of promotional videos aren't just female, they're normative, meaning they are young, they are white, they're heterosexual, and they bake focaccia bread. She then finds that there are cameras in her ceiling that can read the RFID tag on her medicine bottle and remind her when to take her pills. So it says, "Janet, don't forget to take your medication." I would need some too. So I think that actually Adam Greenfield's a little bit defensive about taking seriously promotional videos, taking seriously marketing material. For me, this is a potent form of storytelling, by which I mean it's invariably viral on YouTube. I mean also that these videos are told as stories, as a day in the life of some specific generic protagonist, a Janet, a Jennifer. I don't know why they're J, but they are. Janet, Jennifer. And as I argue, I've got a book coming out on gender and smart media. And I argue there that Janets and Jennifers in environments of ubiquitous computing are themselves becoming increasingly ubiquitous. They are kind of, if you like, everywhere in, I think, at least 3 senses of the word. The obvious one just means they're hypervisible, luminous. And everywhere, W-A-R-E, is bound up in technology, specifically smart glass, actually. Smart glass communication technology. And they're also everywhere in wearables. And the regulatory role of wearables is oriented to the reproduction of women as sexual objects and as managed, optimized, captured, perfected subjects. So we have, for example, 2 examples, Microsoft's productivity future vision, and we have Corning's A Day Made of Glass. And what these corporate visions, what these stories do, is that they manage and regulate and order Janets. And they do it through to-do lists embedded in augmented reality bedroom mirrors, through agendas projected onto smart glass surfaces, through schedules that pop up on your bathroom mirror before you've brushed your teeth, through recipes, health check apps, etc., etc. Janets are offered a veneer of equality. They're packed off to a workplace, and guess what? They never arrive. They're sent home. They are returned home via, invariably, a trip to the shops. And here we have Jennifer buying an applique ruffle blouse and checking herself out in the mirror while her husband, partner, I call him Jeremy. Jeremys are never named in these things. Janets always are. Anyway, Jeremy, he's a brain surgeon. She goes home, hits the sofa with the kids, watches something cosmological on 3D TV display glass, vivid and immersive, thin and lightweight, frameless design. He lies in bed. Reading H.G. Wells' The Time Machine on his portable display glass, ultra-thin, flexible electronics enabling. Given the alignment between time and gendered forms of productivity, I think it's worth asking if there is a time machine for women. I can answer that question at the end if you like. Or alternatively, how we get to build on Adbuster-type parodies in which our not-so-happy housewives tended to get their say. If there is ever a dualism here that needs deconstructing, for me it's this one, smart dumb. The hubris of the smart city idea hinges on the claims of ubiquitous computing, ambient intelligence, and these build on cybernetics, artificial intelligence, artificial life. So what we have now, in environments of ubiquitous computing and ambient intelligence, we have a situation in which intelligence is no longer taking the form of a seemingly autonomous entity, a Robbie the friendly robot, a Terminator, a HAL 9000, yeah? It doesn't happen like that anymore, partly because HAL 9000 scared everybody senseless, right? What happens now is that intelligence becomes embedded, doesn't it? In ordinary, everyday environments and ordinary, everyday materials like tables and chairs and walls and toasters and toilets. There's a smart toilet under development at the moment, and I kid you not. So we have intelligence being distributed, and it's kind of all pervasive, all seeing, all knowing, all detecting itself fundamentally undetectable. And this, never mind the fact that we still don't know, probably never will, with any degree of consensus, what intelligence, let alone life, actually are, right? And the fact that, and this is argumentative, we have singularly failed to build either of them in technological form. We can discuss that if you want. So I've been working on face recognition as an ambient intelligent technology equipped with learning algorithms. And it has been fun, if a little bit too easy perhaps, to look at the failures, to look at the flaws in what is otherwise a quite total system of surveillance and control. And some of the limits of face recognition have to do with computationalism, because a computer doesn't know what a face is, which you might think is a limitation in a face recognition system. It's in fact quite happy with a cardboard cutout, right? And then we have the limitations of fixed optical devices that can't really see, can't detect a face that is furry or blurry or bespectacled, that can't actually deal with expressions in excess of whatever number are already included in a database. It used to be 6, it might be a few more now. And the fact is, for me, that face recognition is as flawed as it is powerful, as it is regenerative, materially as well as symbolically, not just of faces, but of faces as photographic databases. So the databases that get brought forward, the codes and conventions of, if you like, 19th century photography, the sort that you saw in prisons and schools and hospitals and asylums, the work of Havelock Ellis, the work of the eugenicist Francis Galton, who did these, at the bottom here, these composite photos. The idea would be that you would remove extraneous detail from around the face, focus in on the features, and the features would constitute a template of a face that in this case is criminal, and very often for him was also racial. So this is brought forward almost exactly in the algorithms of face recognition. We have digital composites, eigenfaces that do the same thing, turn a face into a template, and we have the groups, the classes, the types of faces. Now the hidden hubris here, the ambition, is that the face has to become identifiable before the system can identify it. The circularity is really key to the bureaucratic, administrative kind of power at stake. Yeah? We're confronted with the necessity of, if you like, becoming mugshot as our faces co-evolve with these systems of face identification. But the thing is, becoming mugshot is not a neutral process. It's structured, differentiated, asymmetrical. It doesn't affect all of us equally. So in recognition of the limitations of the system, researchers are developing gender estimation algorithms, and these work as kind of generic discriminators, not just for gender, but for race and age. They're sorting mechanisms for biological difference. So that's the database that's at stake in the gender estimation algorithm, and those are the faces that are being reproduced. So the algorithm works by deleting connections, statistical connections, between classes, between groups, between types of faces. And so literally regenerating the sort of face that the system subsequently seeks to identify. So I made, because I'm mischievous, a little intervention, a minimal intervention here, by having a go at rewriting a simple set of instructions that underlie this algorithm. And the instructions would normally read, delete all connections until all connections are deleted. And I changed it to add all connections until all connections are completed. There's a cutoff, there's an endpoint, there are still decisions to be made. We can't avoid recreating faces as imaginary objects. We'd never recognize our friends, let alone our own faces in the mirror, if we did that. So the question is how you do it better, where better is not just about system performance, but about ethics, about politics, about intervening and co-writing systems that are regenerating faces that never quite fitted in the categories of either or, yeah? Male or female, black or white, old or young. Faces are, as they always have been, both male, female, black, white, old, young. So you end up with something ambiguous, androgynous, mixed race, and hard to age. This sort of face causes deep anxiety in face recognition researchers, who then go looking for a way to discriminate the androgynous face at the boundary. So how do you sort male from female when the face is androgynous? Answer, according to the research, I quote, eyebrow information. Eyebrow information is the key. Well, I don't think that's going to work. Well, good luck if it does. So, you know, I would say primarily that these systems would fail to cope with ambiguity, and ambiguity or androgyny disrupts, disorders, yeah? A system that's based on structuring, that's based on ordering, gender and race and age. And this will happen when we don't pay attention to structure, and when, with the kind of current way of thinking about technologies, we get too obsessed with scale. We get too obsessed with technologies like algorithms that are allegedly beneath the scale of human perception and human intervention. I simply don't agree. So we have also this, which suggests for me that the smart city subject is a neoliberal subject. Feminized, I'm suggesting, with reference to kitchens and blouses and baking, with flexible labor, efficiency, productivity, responsibility, and transparency. I mean, in these ubiquitous computing environments, ubiquitous women are transparent. They are luminously, lustrously present. They are scrutinized. Captured, in a sense, as they always have been historically, in glass. So I'm thinking of the mirror reflections that populated 19th century art and literature. But I'm interested in the extent to which women are captured not just in glass now, but as glass. The sort of glass that Corning tells us is itself ultra-thin, flexible, and hardworking. And this hardworking glass, in a sense, displaces the Janets, goes to work in place of them, right, as their kind of digital doppelganger, if you like. And we've always had a situation where technology compensates for perceived limitations in female productivity, but I think there's something going on in terms of a fairy tale, a Cinderella story, about scullery maids becoming princesses, about glass slippers in the process of becoming glass feet. So as glass transforms itself into a smart subject, right, a subject that is itself flexible, thin, reliable, hardworking, pristine, what we have left is a lot of shiny glass stuff that adds value to products and also a kind of scrutiny to women. And I think the value of this fairy tale in terms of what you can do with it is that feminism has always used fairy tales to be, in a sense, politically retold. So what I'm doing in my own work is retelling the tale of generic Janet through academic work, through manifestos, through a novel, provisionally entitled A Day in the Life of Janet Smart. And it uses the to-do lists, it uses the schedules, it uses the clock countdowns that corporate visions offer us. And it renders her day a hell of a day that regulates her in time, structured time, clock time, live time, labor time, but also extends her as time, as what the philosophers term potentia, or the desire to become. This desire for life itself cuts across potential, or the desire to become better, more productive, more streamlined, more optimized. So these two terms, potentia and potential, are a kind of temporal axis within feminism, and I'm saying we cannot choose between them, basically. They're not oppositional. My Janet's day is both about life and labor. She simply doesn't get to choose. So as she lives through her day, she becomes this agent of her own reconstitution as a political subject in exactly the way I set out at the beginning in terms of an emergent citizen. And a reconstitution of this neoliberal subject is held in the tension between productivity and whatever productivity is not. So we also have the opposition of sterile and sexist. So I think future cities do foreground certain problems of power, of knowledge, of gender, of race, of other forms of difference. And whatever the fate of smart city prototypes like Songdo City, or of 21st century glass worlds that haven't scaled up yet and probably never will scale up, we still have to recognize, I think, the sort of unholy alliance between corporatism and computationalism as a nascent totality, as one that wipes away a whole lot of other values and creates precisely the sort of sterile political vacuum that enables jokey forms of misogyny or ironic, non-ironic, ironic forms of sexism to happen. So in an environment that gives us Gamergate, right, as the kind of abuse of women passed off as banter, in an environment that gives us what Laura Bates terms everyday sexism, Microsoft have come up with a smart bra. And it's for measuring mood. It has an integrated sensor that monitors heart rate, that monitors blood pressure. So the justification of a smart bra is that it prevents you from doing stress-related overeating. To go with our smart bra, we have smart pants. And they're vibrating pants, and they are modeled in the videos invariably by women, everywhereers, and controlled by invariably heterosexual partners. There's a modification of the smart bra, and it's called a chastity bra. As its name suggests, this is for Cinderellas everywhere, right? It's locked most of the time until Prince Charming comes along, and the wearer's heart rate reaches a level, if you like, pseudo-scientifically associated with true love. And then, hey presto, the whole thing allegedly flies off. The fact that this works, and I would swear that it doesn't, right? I very, very, very much doubt that any of this stuff works. But if it works, through a combination of sensors and actuators and algorithms, only for me underlies the singular error, the illusion of algorithmic autonomy or determinism. This may be about a lot of things, but I really, really don't think it's about algorithms, okay? So there's a thinking at the moment that algorithms are all powerful. It's allied with a kind of, it's called post-humanism, and it's a sort of sense of being post as in after the human. And this kind of thinking will substitute concern with gender, race, and other kinds of difference and structure in favor of scale. It will want to stop talking about power and human subjects and talk instead about, I don't know, environments of smart things, objects, materials, as things in themselves. And I think that's a mistake, and I think we only get things like smart bras because we're not doing very smart thinking at the moment. I rather suspect that smart city planners love the post-humanists. I think they probably prayed for the current crop of ecologically minded extinctionists, and they are out there. This is a band of brothers, of male metaphysicians who are celebrating the end of the Anthropocene. That would be our imminent environmental demise, with one, it seems to me, particularly loud declaration, namely, in my end is my beginning. Right? So I think that this abandonment of political struggle, which is going on in thinking, in philosophy, the exodus, as the political theorist Chantal Mouffe puts it, in this kind of after the human, apocalyptic thinking, this works too well for the values of corporate computationalism. What works less well, and therefore might be more useful to those of us who have an interventional turn of mind, what works less well is staying with the trouble that we, meaning some of us more than others, are in. So just to finish, I think that the myth, and I think it is a myth, of the seamless, sustainable smart city is challenged with one question: seamless and sustainable for who? Whose lives are made livable or unlivable, sustainable or unsustainable, in the not equal tension between productivity, efficiency, optimization, and whatever it's not. Difference, diversity are extruded from the future city ideal. They therefore pretty much prevent it from becoming a reality, because difference and diversity will make chaos in orderliness, conflict in consensus. And I think we need that kind of deconstruction. We need to unpack those oppositions. And I think we can learn something too from the theatre of the absurd, particularly from the sort of absurdism that was captured by the filmmaker Jacques Tati in relation to the antecedents of the future city and the future home. This kind of absurdism is echoed for me time and time and time again in reference to talking kitchen worktops, vibrating pants, exploding bras, and things like eyebrow information. Okay, I'm done.